old friend of elves who sacrificed his life to save them. She wonders if he is alive as she doesn't get to thank him and asks him what he wants. So he tells her that it's something she could handle easily. He explained that a child had been born with the eye for truth. As he knows, those born with it are fated to live short lives. As he was a genius in alchemy, he figured out he might be able to make an antidote for her curse. He thought that to create the antidote, he would need the sander flower that grows here, and he agreed that he would tell him how he learned to use dragon fear. Since he agreed, he decided to take the vow of mana because trust is the essential thing in a situation like this. He tells him that he could make the antidote, but he needs to get the ingredients, and he agrees to get them for him, so they make the deal. He thought he was stupid because someone is only born with the mind eye once every 1,000 years, and he thought making an antidote for it would be easy, because even searching for the ingredients would take an eternity, and he wanted to see how he liked that. He vowed on Mana that in return for creating an antidote to cure the curse of the mind eye, he would provide information regarding the Zerarch Orvis and the truth behind the dragon's fear. He cunningly said that he would tell him about the ingredient for the antidote and was sure that it would take a long. So he wanted him to tell the truth behind dragon fear. He told him not to worry because, except for the sander flower, he already had all the ingredients. So he told him about the flower and was shocked that he had all the ingredients. He thought it was impossible as he might have the most, but few ingredients would be impossible to get with just the power of a mere human. He wondered if he was talking about the dragon's heart fragment, and he took off his earring and said it would answer her second question. He was shocked to know that his earring wasn't an ordinary earring but a black dragon earring, and realized that fear would be possible with that dragon. It was filled with curses just like the mind eye, and it has a dragon curse to top it all off because it was made using the dragon heart. If a lesser being than that of the dragon used it, they would go crazy from the demonic energy it radiates unless they were a demon or demon king. No one could withstand that. He said that even if he used the dragon earring, it still wouldn't have been enough to break through Lord Crevass's barrier, and wondered if he was a human, so he asked who he was. He can't tell yet and asks if he still looks human to her, and he wonders who he is. He says he is a god, so he passed on. He is always interested in making fun of Ash and the Assassination King, and it is the perfect moment for him to take him home. And that's how he gets his first pet. At the Grand Palace of Avalon Empire Kalatika Palace, the knight uttered that the Black God Arden von Agnes has agreed to fulfill his orders. He will lead the vanguard in the upcoming Continental War, and the Emperor knew he should have no choice but to follow his order. Still, the knight thought that although it might be presumptuous, he got rid of the Duke's financial source, the Pontier family, and his strategist leaders, the Rebecca family. So Jacking thought that the fact that Duke Agnes wasn't resisting his orders and was following them smoothly instead was very suspicious. The Emperor was sure he wouldn't betray him and that the knight would know that Agnes's child had recently caused a significant accident. Not only did he lead a foreign nation's knights inside his territory, but he also killed many of his men, including his favorite Count, Cox. He might be well aware that his son's life is on the line. That's why he made this deal with him in return for looking the other way. While standing, he explained that all the conditions have been fulfilled at the center of the continent. Reinhardt and one of the continent's strongest superhumans, Joshua Sanders, are within his grasp. He ordered him to call the Grand Nobles at the palace and call Joshua Sanders to the Grand Palace immediately. Avalon Empire Ivory Tower of the Imperial Magicians. The prince told Evergrant that he moved Cercerin to his palace, and his father isn't even paying attention to this. But he was curious because he acted as if he wouldn't help him when he asked for assistance. Why was he helping after all this time? Evergrant uttered that because of the Empire's current situation, the Emperor wanted to start a war in the name of continental unity, so he did not care about anything else that was happening. Because the Black God, Duke Agnes, is leading his troops to the Swallow Empire for the war, he assumes that things will end quickly. After the war, he is confident that he will inherit the throne and take control and calm down this messy country. And the prince smiles cunningly and questions if he assumed he would inherit the throne instead of his brother, the first prince. Even though everyone called him a tyrant like his father, he wanted to end the conversation because he supposed that he was trying to end this conversation because he saw no intention in it if that's his intention. He shouted to wait and uttered that he wanted to become the leader of the Magic Tower, and he was enraged on hearing that Evergrant wanted to be the leader there because this meant he was willing to betray them to join one of them. He explained that he wanted to maintain his position as the chief imperial magician, so his final goal was to become both the strongest magician in the Avalon Empire and the owner of the Magic Tower. The prince can believe what he is saying and suggests being glad that he can continue living in the position that he currently lives in. but he is impressed. A prideful magician like him would be willing to do anything in the name of greed. It's so realistic that he liked it. The prince inquired what he needed to claim the throne, and the magician explained that he was making a secret potion that would hide the symptoms of any illness and allow the user to act like they were fine for a single day. The potion will bring the user's full potential for one last moment. They could use the Lady Sorcerin to seemingly cure her illness so they could use her vision to their benefit for one day. But once the effect of the potion wears off, the user will die. The prince was sure his sister would love that because she would die anyway. If she could have just one more day to use the power of the mind's eye, she would be happier to die for his cause. He told him to continue because he was more curious about how they had used her power. So Evergrant was glad because he was satisfied and explained and understood his plan. So he left the plan to him and left. After he left, he uttered that everything went well and asked him what he thought. And the fourth prince also found it pretty interesting and wondered if his brother would behave as they predicted. Of all his siblings, his second brother is the smartest, so he wouldn't be easy to deal with. But the knight said that those willing to do anything for their goals might be able to become a Brutus, but they never be a Cairo. The origin of the Avalon Empire, the Asgard kingdom, the first king, Brutus, did everything necessary to take the throne but faced the same fate as his predecessor did at the end of his rule. On the other hand, Cairo, who led his people through vision and leadership, was one of the most fabulous kings in the history of the Asgard kingdom, claiming more than half of the continent as his. Evergrant Khan Ashbolt supposed that wasn't enough to earn the second prize trust, but he also had no usefulness at his disposal, and the first prince, Kisser, had the support of the Tremblin family in power. In the current state, the second prince won't be able to win in a fight for control, and he thinks that although it's the case now, but the entire story would change in Zerath. Dick Orvis gets involved and thinks it would be more accurate to call him Barubaru after he sold his soul to demons. He explained that if they continued to help the second prince, he would have a choice but to start depending on them. They would use the second prince to pressure the first prince and use him as bait, defeating him and gaining the first prize trust. That was Kaiser's plan, too. But this is all under the assumption that there won't be any big issue like Joshua Sanders, as the Old Kingdom Reinhardt used to ignore their previous king Rain Jiger, one of the 12 superhumans. But they have to move to protect him and others. They are usually highly skilled at that age, so he might be hiding something, so they need to get rid of him before he stops them. That was why he needed to ask for another favor. He needed both the second prince and Joshua to become a potential danger to the Avalon Empire. If they can do that, they will no longer be able to express their power within the Empire, and Evergrant understands what he means and assures him that it will be possible as long as he returns on time. He trusted him more than anyone else, so he was sure he would take care of things and decided to leave to rest because he had bothered him enough. He thinks for a while and apologizes for asking this late and questions he thinks he resembles the most, Brutus or Cairo, but he had never thought about it, so if he has to pick someone, he wants to be like Heimdall. Trifier region, the Sanders Flower, also known as the Flower of Oblivion, and Alundus was pointing at the mountain top. The protagonist assumed that it wouldn't be difficult to retrieve it. He told him that it was dangerous to enter this area with the black dragon earring and thought it would be a waste to use it on something like medicine. He told him to be quiet and remember who he was because he would face retribution if he kept talking like that. He is enraged as he lies and asks if he thinks he will believe him, although he says he is trembling. Alundus says he is only helping him because he wants to see his old friend. He asked if he knew the side effects of the Sanders Flower, and he was aware that to gain something, he had to lose something in return. If she uses the Sander Flowers, she may regain her eyes and life, but she will lose her memories, and he isn't sure how much she will forget and thinks it would be better if she didn't have to remember her painful past. They were started, and Elnubis started crying because he thought they would both die because the black dragon Krevissa was back. The dragon never thought that a mere human would trespass into his territory and said that he would make him pay for it and rushed to attack and kill him. The dragon rushed to attack him, and he attacked him back using the spear and hitting its head, but the dragon threw him back, and the protagonist smiled as it was stronger than he expected. He knew that the black dragon would be something else, and the dragon looked at him and asked who he was. He thought that if he told the dragon he was the god, then it would get angry as it would be considered blasphemy. He decided to make up a story to tell the dragon. Alundus rambled that he was highly suspicious, and the dragon looked at him and asked what he meant. He explained that he claimed to be dead despite being human. He said that if he looked closely at his right ear, he wore a black dragon earring when the protagonist told him to shut up. Dragon wonders if he is a human and wonders what he means, so Dragon explains that he uses demonic energy to attack, Yet he uses holy energy to heal himself and wonders what kind of being can use both demonic and holy energy. Joshua realized that Crevice wasn't as hot-headed as to ignore what Ash was saying and assured that he would be able to end this with a conversation. But the dragon wanted to punish those who trespassed onto his territory as his identity was none of his business and attacked him. The protagonist guessed that he shouldn't have expected that much, and he was blocking the attack and changing to his demonic form. Lukia suggested teaching that overgrown lizard a lesson about his actual power, and he liked his plan as it would be a perfect test if he could defeat the black dragon in one strike. He thought that there was no being on Earth that could challenge him in the skill that he couldn't reach in his past life, and he used the magic spear level 6, and there was an explosion. He was somewhere else and remembered that he was blocking Crevice's breath, and then wondered where he was while many demons rushed toward him to rip him to shreds. He wonders if he is in the demon realm and if too many of them are called Lukia, but the demons pass through him and head toward an angel who killed them using the spear. His surroundings changed again, and the angel said that he didn't resent him, but for betraying his faith, he took the wings of Michael, and he was shocked to see Michael's face. He wondered if it was showing him the past and if it was Lukia's memories, and he cut his wing and told him to resent him, and his surroundings changed again. He was at the front of the globe, surrounded by redness, but the redness disappeared when he looked at it. Ash assumed he wouldn't be able to withstand Lord Crevice's breath, and he knew he wasn't God but was stunned when he saw him coming out with the wings and horns. His appearance was changed, and he didn't understand the meaning behind the illusion. But it wasn't useless. He assumed that part of his memories opened up with each stage. Then, once he reached Mag Spear Art Stage 8, known as the Power of God, he would finally learn the truth. He hurried to attack the dragon, and it says that he doesn't know whether he is good or evil, but as long as he is capable of enduring his middle realm, it would do anything in its capacity to destroy him. Dragon breathed out at him again. He used the dance of heavenly destruction and moved toward it while making the barrier around himself. The dragon was stunned because he pierced through his breath and pierced through the dragon's body, which surprised Ash, and he wondered if he did. He managed to do this because even the most high-ranked demons are incapable of that. The dragon fell to the ground and asked how he did that, and when he was, the protagonist replied that his identity was not that important and explained that he was well aware of the reason for his anger. This is not because a human has trespassed onto his territory. He was sure it was because of what happened at the end of the Trifia area, the incident at the Rebecca Castle. He realized that he was well aware of it and commented that humans crossed a line they shouldn't have, using demonic power to turn their kind into ghouls, which could never be forgiven, so the emperor of this land would have to pay for this. The protagonist smiles as he knows where everything started and wonders about this even before regressing. Suppose this was the starting point of the conflict between Crevice and the Avalon Empire royals and how they managed to make a deal with the guardian black dragon. So, if he keeps in mind that Evergrant is behind this, he could conclude that he was apologetic because he was taking that deal for himself. Cain was practicing when Icarus arrived and suggested having some rest because he had training for the last 4 days. But he didn't want to rest because he wanted to be of use to the protagonist, so he needed to be better than a rank. He wonders what he is doing there. He explains that an edict was sent to the Lord and the Emperor, and Cain asks how he knew it was from the Emperor even without opening it. Although he couldn't read it since it was written that he was the only one who should open it, they got involved in the territorial war between the Pontier and the Cromwells without the Emperor's orders. Foreign knights have appeared on their land, so it was apparent this would be coming. Cain said it was simply his best guess, but he never knew until he opened it. They decided to open it and check, and Icarus laughed because they had the same thought while he opened the letter. Cain grabbed his hand and reminded them that only the Lord should open it as he never knew what might happen. He decided to take responsibility, but Icarus wanted to say the same. Kai said that the knight has to protect their lady, and he was startled why he was saying that again. He asked how much longer she would pretend that he was a man because most people already knew that Icarus was a lady, and he wanted to take responsibility for it, so he told her to accept it. She was surprised since everyone already knew she was a girl, but he wanted to talk about it afterward as he had more important things at hand. She wondered if he was sure he was okay with taking responsibility, and he asked what he was supposed to do since he had already opened it and wanted to hurry and check what was written inside. It was a summon and warning letter for Duke Agnes and Joshua to return to the palace along with the Wilhelm Knight, and in case of disobedience, they would be punished. He can't believe their audacity, and Icarus asks him what it says, so he tells her that they wanted the Lord to report to the palace within 5 days. But the only issue is that he is in the Trifia region right now, and it doesn't have a warp gate. If they include the time it would take to arrive and deliver this message, he wouldn't make it to the palace for at least 2 weeks. It would be a stretch to arrive at the palace within 5 days even if they left Peril Castle. And Icarus said there was no need to worry about that because he was sure he was done with his duties and would be heading back. She decided to set a course for the palace first thing in the morning, but before that, she needed to take care of what Joshua asked her. But he still couldn't leave the Pontier family alone in Peril Castle. She uttered that he did not need to worry about that since she had already requested some assistance, and he wondered who she requested, but she suggested not to be sorry and to get ready to leave. Mercenaries Guild was there, and Axular Man asked if he was sure it was brilliant to accept the request, but he was sure about it because it was common sense to right their wrongs first. At the same time, he completed the medicine and asked for permission to ask questions, since he was curious about something. He said that he already got what he wanted, so what need was there for him to go with him? He asked him to let him go. The dragon made a deal with him and asked what he wanted in return. So Joshua told his first condition that he wanted ash and fully bloomed sander flowers. Joshua told Ash that technically, he was a full-fledged knight, but he didn't have his servant, so he wanted him to serve that role for 10 years. He was crying because he didn't want to as 10 years are too long and said that although he did like it, he descended from high elves who are holy and sacred, so he refused to be a servant. He uttered that although he was okay with serving the black dragon, he refused to serve him even after he tried to get him killed and can believe so made him the servant for 15 years. Ash explained that it wasn't his intention and wanted to make a deal with him. He could tell he was using the primordial stone and promised to tell him where other primordial stones were. He doesn't want to live like a servant because he wants to get freedom and says that if he refuses, then make it 3 years or 5 years, and he agrees to make it 5 years, so he asks for the location of other primordial stones. He asked him not to take his word back while he asked about the kind of primordial stones they are, and he said that Tempest is a piece of God that has the power of the windstorm. While discussing the matter, the black dragon arrived and told him that he could leave since he had healed himself. He decided to leave and asked him to keep the deal till the end. At the Grand Palace of the Avalon Empire, Jacqueline reported that, excluding Duke Agnes, members of the central nobility had all arrived. He was furious at knowing that Agnes was there and supposed that both father and son were talented in agitating him, so he instructed his knights that if they didn't arrive on time, he would kill one of their people every 10 minutes if they were late. He will ensure that families supporting Joshua pay for their mistakes because the Reinhardt and the Wilhelm Knights will belong to him, so he will leave them. He heard the noise coming outside that Dragon had appeared, which startled them while they rang the bell to gather all the forces. The commander of the Imperial Knights, Rod Den Haag, instructed the knights of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battalions to focus on protecting the Man Palace, so the battalions came forward. The commander instructed the 4th, 5th, and 6th battalions to enter the palace interior, and the 7th, 8th, and 9th battalions were directed to protect the palace gates. While he was going to destroy the remaining forces, Katz rushed and apologized for the late arrival, as they had just arrived after receiving their orders. Langer was angry at Katz as they were already short-staffed because Captain Joshua wasn't there, but he dared to be late to a battle. Since the commander Joshua wasn't there, he commanded the 11th and 12th battalions to stay back and act as backup, and so the vice commander of the 12th battalion, Katz, replied that he understood. The battalions were passing while hitting him and furiously told them to watch while they walked, and the knights laughed because he was pretty loud despite not having their commander with him. He asked him where he was going since he wasn't done talking, but the knight reminded him that he heard what the commander said, so they should shut up and get lost. He was frustrated, but Langer told him to calm down because this wasn't the time for this, and they saw something coming down the dragon, so they ordered the Imperial mages to prepare the shield spell. He instructed them to act as necessary and not let their guard down while the knights were worried, wondering what they should do because it was the Black Dragon. But whatever it took, they had to protect the castle. Bison was looking at the sky, shocked and wondering if it was what he thought it was, and they wondered what he was talking about. So he told them to look closely at its commander Joshua while Ash was falling and terrified, and the battalions were shocked and wondering where he was coming from. He doesn't want to ride the Black Dragon and requests he kill him instead. But Joshua tells him to calm down since his old owner has allowed him to fly on him. But he fears heights. He said that was why they needed to jump because it might be like his practice, and he wondered what he was talking about. He told him that he needed to practice to win his inner fears because he would climb Yggdrasil eventually. He was startled and asked how he knew about it, and he replied that although he doesn't know everything, There is one thing he could say with certainty, that he could never arrive at an answer by ignoring and avoiding the problem. He should avoid the problem and instead face it. That's why he needs to break through and jump. And all he needs to do is face his fears and take one step. The black dragon was bothered by them and threw them away, telling them to get lost, while Ash was trembling due to fear of heights but was calm. Brunsten wonders where the magician is, but Gestalt Khan Tremblin requests him to calm down because the most important thing is the Emperor's safety. He replied that His Majesty was the most skilled person in the Avalon, so he had a higher chance of survival than them. He was just furious because the Imperial Chief Magician disappeared as soon as the dragon appeared, and finally, Duke Agnes arrived. Everegrant reported that although it was a bit early, it was just as they expected, and the Emperor thought that all he needed to do was offer the Black Dragon a condition that it would never be able to refuse. He inquired if he was sure about it because if they were even slightly wrong, they would die. But he assured him that he would worry. He was confident about what that Black Dragon wanted, so he requested to allow him to offer a brief explanation. The Black Dragon appeared because humans have trespassed into his territory. The fact that people have been experimenting with the undead and have succeeded in making the Gowls is a much more significant concern. The Black Dragon must have gotten curious after smelling the demonic energy despite not showing himself for a long time. He must have wanted to check the source of the demonic energy, so he was sure he didn't want to lose the chance to study the living demons to satisfy his curiosity. This might be his only chance to witness a living demon for himself rather than fulfilling his role as the protector of the Middle Realm. He is just a giant lizard trying to fulfill his personal goals. From there, it would be pretty easy to get the support of the Black Dragon consumed by greed with the concentrated demonic energy, and the source of demons, the horn of a demon. He thought that the middle-class demon horn should have satisfied his greed, and he would ask for the source of the horn. So, using the information he had to gain his attention, they could control the Black Dragon however they wanted. After hearing his plan, the Emperor asked if that meant he had already secured the middle-class demon horn that would be able to satisfy him, and he said yes. He was worried because he had almost broken the contract with the demon because he was silent. The Emperor inquired why he stopped talking. While he was going to give the reason, they heard the news that the dragon was retreating, and they were stunned. Evergrant was wondering why it was going away, as this might ruin his plan. He apologized to him and said that to fulfill his orders, he asked for permission to leave his presence. Emperor Marcus angrily looked at him and permitted him, so he thanked him and left. He commanded Jacqueline to follow him and told him that if that magician had any plans hand, he should feel free to get rid of him on the spot. The nobles gossiped as they heard that the dragon was retreating and wondered why it would retreat as soon as it arrived. Talon Munbrew asked Provalum if he said a single puff of a dragon's breath could evaporate an entire city. They needed to stay on guard as long as that thing was alive. Provalum knew why they needed a contingency plan for when it appeared again, but he thought there was no need for that, as all they needed to do was sacrifice the reason why it had appeared in the first place. The person who dragged armed forces into the Trifear region, which is known for being the dragon territory, and Cromwell asked furiously if he was talking about him as he was the one who pushed him to end the war as soon as possible. He suggested forgetting that and asked if they didn't find it suspicious that the day they had the critical meeting appeared simultaneously. He was sure that Joshua was behind the recent event and the cause of the Empire's end wasn't him. But the protagonist and Joshua arrived while Ash kicked open the door and cursed them all. They were looking at them, and he asked what he thought if he got their attention and was feeling so charismatic then. The protagonist said yes, but that's not what he wanted. He guessed it served the same purpose while the nobles were furious at him, because he was rude, and they never thought he would make such a scene despite all the trouble he had been causing. They wonder if he lost his manner when he gained the mere title of master and question if he could even comprehend the Empire's current state. Talon Munbrew suggested he fulfill his duties as a knight if he had returned and asked if he had forgotten his duties as the Imperial Knight. Ash whispered to let him know if he wanted him to shut these humans up because he had the perfect spell for them. The great son of the Empire, Emperor Marcus von Britain, arrived, so they looked back and greeted him, and he also greeted and told Ash to follow him. He told him to keep quiet because he was the king too and greeted Marcus while he looked at him and smiled. While Ash thought he was so thick, although he had lived thousands of years, he had never met a human who smelled so strongly of bloodshed and wondered how crazy he was for the blood. The Emperor was surprised to think he arrived at the castle this quickly because he heard he was within the Pontier family's territory in the south. The protagonist replied that he hurried to arrive at his command and complete his necessary orders. He came as soon as possible. He wondered what necessary orders he was talking about, so he told him that he was told to do his duty as the Imperial Knight. He was sure that he would have seen the enraged dragon flying over the skies of Akardi. The cause of the disruption should pay for his action. Marquis Georg Cromwell used the territorial war as an excuse to enter the forbidden lands of the Black Dragon territory to incite his anger and ask for the Emperor's permission to arrest him and ensure he paid. He thought he was arrogant and wondered if he thought this would do him any good, and he smiled because the playtime started because his father had already been at his command. So he was satisfied with this and commanded Joshua to do as he pleased, which shocked the noble, and they wondered if he just cut ties with them and what they should do now. Cromwell requested that he listen to him as he lied and explained that although they entered the trying region, they were moving strictly on his orders. He looked at him angrily and asked Aidan what he would do if he were at his place, as he claimed that he was the reason for everything. He was trembling in fear, telling Agnes that it was not what it meant, and Agnes uttered that merely following his order was such a boring answer, so Joshua went to him and said he would be taking him to his jail cell. They were at the Imperial Palace meeting room when the announcement was made that Imperial Knight Joshua, who arrested the Marquis Cromwell, was arriving. He greeted the Emperor and reported that he had returned safely after completing his order. The Emperor remarked that he was always surprised by him and almost scared, which is the only source of enjoyment that he experienced in this peaceful continent. That was why, regarding the Wilhelm Knights, who were armed forces of foreign nations, he would have to punish him for allowing them to step foot on his land. But he would rather not lose him. He doesn't want to punish him for allowing them to trespass. In return, he wants him to become his sword, and he will give him his daughter, Princess Cercerin. He was stunned, and one of the nobles apologized for intruding and awarded him for the deteriorating health of the princess. But he replied that's why there was more worth in that. Because he wouldn't need to worry about the dying princess, he could still maintain his position and be given the right to challenge the throne regardless of his title. This was his once-in-a-lifetime chance to become the nation's emperor, something even his father had failed to do. He questioned if that was what he wanted for a neglected child like him to become the emperor of the continent's most extraordinary nation, and become his sword. All he asked for was one vow. He wonders why he hesitates, and the protagonist is enraged because his attitude towards Cercerin is still the same, and he doesn't intend to use her like that to become emperor. He apologized because that was an order he couldn't fulfill, and the emperor was stunned and the nobles thought he wasted such a golden opportunity by declining to marry the princess. The emperor furiously asked if he was rejecting his offer to marry his daughter, and threatened that the matter regarding the Wilhelm Knights could be considered treason. He wondered if he understood what he was saying and decided to give him one last chance, but this time, it wasn't an offer, but an order. He again apologized because he was comparing him to an object, likening him to a sword, and reminded him that objects have prices that directly correlate to their value. The emperor chimed if he was trying to bargain with him, and it seemed to him like he misunderstood as the Avalon Empire would become his, and the land and everything in it would become his, too. He clarified that he meant that he was not complete yet and asked for more time than he could guarantee that he would become an outstanding sword that was second to none. Eventually, he would become 18 and finally choose who he would serve, so he requested him to wait till then. The emperor forgot that he was not 18 yet, and it didn't seem like a bad idea to follow tradition and wait until he was of age, so he asked what he wanted. He was surprised and wondered what he meant, but he told him there was no need for such a surprise because he was trying to gain favor in the competition for his support, so he asked what he wanted. He stated that he would like to create a new Knight Order composed of the 11th and 12th battalions under his control. Everyone was shocked and was against this and requested them not to listen to his request, thinking that there would be Knight Order other than the Imperial Knights would occupy the castle, and they were suspicious that he might harbor ill intentions toward them. The Emperor told them to be quiet, and he told him, as he could see from their reaction, that his request was impossible to fulfill, and he wondered why he wanted the Knight's Order from all things. The protagonist explained that he is already aware that he had experienced prejudice all his life for being an illegitimate child, and his others suffered as a result. That's why he understood how the 11th and the 12th battalions felt. Each of those men dreamed of becoming the Empire's most incredible knight, so he wanted to be able to support their journey by creating the continent's most excellent Knight Order. He liked his idea of kinship and said that if he intended to create the continent's most fantastic Knight Order, why would he decline his request? He allowed it and asked if he wanted anything else. But that was enough for him, so the Emperor permitted him and the Wilhelm Knights forgiveness. He appointed him from that moment onward as the Empire Count. Additionally, the territories of Marquis Cromwell, the traitor, will all be given to him, and with this, he concluded the Central Nobles meeting and told Joshua to think of his middle name in his free time. He was looking forward to their next meeting and would be waiting for whatever news he would bring next, and his father said that it seemed he was getting closer to the center of power. Talon Munbrew can't believe that the empire is in shambles because creating an independent night order is one thing, but to think he would leave his management to a young child. Pravalum uttered that there was no need to worry. He would gain more attention from the nobles the more he moved. What can a mere marquis family do within the empire? Ash rushed toward them, calling them old folks, and said that he was sure they heard what the emperor said, that he would take Count Joshua for himself. He said that he had given all of them a chance, and they wondered what he was talking about, so they told him to get lost. But he suggested listening to him because first, they would give people special privileges for joining them, and there would be nothing for those who joined late. They wonder what kind of privilege he has, but he tells them that if they wanted an easy life, they should rab on. And the nobles rushed toward him to be the first one and were pushing each other. Everyone wanted to be the one to support Count Joshua, while Talon Brew was worried because not only did he have an independent knight to influence the empire, if the family started supporting him, his influence would soon surpass Emperor Marcus's. Meanwhile, Evergrande thought they messed up as it seemed Crevasse didn't take the bait, and asked what they should do now. But he told him not to worry because nothing changed. They were destined to face Crevasse later, and he never thought that Heimdall would be correct that Joshua would be a problem. He doesn't know how he managed to get the Black Dragon on his side, but they can't allow him to ruin their plans, so he decides to leave Joshua to another contractor. Evergrande uttered that the time wasn't right for that because Emperor Marcus was watching him, so they needed time for Duke Agnes's family. They need to wait until the second Prince Kaizen's forces grow strong enough, and he thinks it would be better for them to eliminate the Emperor Marcus and the magic tower, so he wonders if everything is ready. Evergrande explained that Heimdall had leaked information on Asher von Britten, so he was sure the news would soon reach Emperor Marcus' ears through the Black Wind. He thought it was perfect, so they would start by eliminating him, take things step by step, and say that even after that tyrannical emperor died, he hoped he would continue to maintain his greed. He wanted the Emperor's Death Knight as it would be amazing, and she attacked the wall, which shocked Evergrande because there was shadow subspace in the wall. Jackian, the Black Wind that works for the Emperor, appeared, and he wondered how he knew about him because even the superhuman wouldn't be able to sense him. Asmodeus, the top-level demon, rank 32, uttered that it was because there was no way human common sense could ever comprehend. At the Avalon Imperial Night Order 11th and 12th Battalion's headquarters, they were celebrating his victory, and Bison was surprised as he never thought he would say something like that in front of those nobles. Langer was pleased to think that they would get to develop their night order and was sure the other battalions would get jealous. Cax asked what kind of night order he was planning to organize, and Joshua said that although he couldn't tell them the details, he had to tell them something like the legend of the Swallow Empire, the first aerial knights of Avalon that would surpass the Wyvern Knights with the greatest predator of the continent, and existence to fear, the nightmare of the frozen lands, the Black Dragon, the Crevasse Night Order. They were excited and wondered if they would be able to get on the dragon and assumed that it would be something that would last throughout history. Ash smiled and thought they should keep dreaming because not everyone could get on Lord Crevasse and thought their leader was a fool. The knight entered and apologized to him for intruding during his banquet, but informed him that a guest had arrived with urgent news. He wonders who he is his guest, so the Agnes family knight Armstrong appears and apologizes for bothering him out of nowhere. The protagonist thanked him for taking the time to come there and asked what were he trying to talk about. He informed him that it was the call from Duke Agnes, and he wondered why now. Armstrong explained that since no one had achieved as much success as him, he wanted to invite him to the estate and celebrate the occasion as the Lady Lucia was waiting for him. Although he would love to see his mother as soon as possible, he needed to take care of work in the Accardi, so he promised to head for the estate as soon as he was done. He said that it would be great if he did so and that if there wasn't an issue, he could ask what work he needed to finish as he needed something he could use to explain to the Duke. He explained that it was nothing he was planning on visiting the Brilliant Flower Palace, and the knight wondered if he was trying to visit the princess at the Brilliant Flower Palace. He assumed the rumors from the Emperor might be correct, but he explained that it had nothing to do with the Emperor's order. He thought it was unfortunate because he hoped it would be a chance to witness the spear skills of a master like him, and he wondered what he meant. He asked if he hadn't heard the news yet that His Highness was utilizing the bloody Battle of Bircher to find Princess Cercerin, a husband. While the protagonist was stunned, the knight added that the most important thing is that all the citizens of the Avalon Empire are allowed to participate, and he found it surprising to give anyone a chance. This was all thanks to the chief magician Evergard because he completed the medicine for Princess Cercerin. He gets furious and asks if he successfully created the medicine and is currently with her, and the knight thinks he was with her. Meanwhile, Cain, Icarus, and Iselin were at the exchange gate, and Icarus asked what he was thinking of doing after bringing Lady Iselin all the way there. He explained that he was told she wanted to come with them since they were in a hurry. He assumed he could sneak her, and Icarus asked if he considered how expensive the gate usage fees were before he said that. But he thought it was more critical for them to arrive in Akardi as soon as possible. She agreed that he was not wrong. But they had a budget, so they could use their fund without planning. While arguing, she went to the gatekeeper and told him they were there to use the gate and that there were 3 people, including the 2 behind her. The older adult looked at them, and they seemed like a young girl and a runaway knight, and magicians. They greeted him, and he smiled cunningly and said that because they were nobles, he asked for permission to check their identities first. He thought they would be perfect tools as he could get as much money from them as possible. But Cain felt terrible about this. Icarus told him that he should know that if criminals used the gate, there was no way anyone could catch those people, and reminded him that they could use it because of Cromwell. He was angry because they weren't even criminals, and he knew they shouldn't be there, so he suggested being on their way while Iselin put out a shining plate that dazzled their eyes. They were stunned to see it, as it was the rumored magician's mercenary with a gold plate known to be as rare as a spirit user. Iselin said that she is the magician mercenary Celine and asked the man if it's fine enough, and she never thought that she would use something like that she made while being chased by the Cromwell family. He smiled and uttered how unskilled she was that a young magician like her could become a mercenary, and he could already tell she was weak. He inquired if the other 2 were also mercenaries, which made Icarus angry, so she spouted that they were people from the Sanders family serving under Lord Joshua Sanders. She was sure this should be enough for him, so she suggested he stop playing with them, but he replied that he wasn't playing with them as it was the procedure he was told to follow. He wondered if they were talking about the famous Joshua, whom he didn't know, but he couldn't care less about their identity since their destination was Akardi. He demanded 1,000 gold per person, and 3,000 should be enough. They were shocked as they could cross the continent with that kind of money and wondered who he thought he was. Cain tells him to stop scamming them as he is a fraud, and he gets angry because they called him a fraud. He says that his family might be famous, which is why they associate themselves with mercenaries. He refused to accommodate them and told them to get lost because he would officially report this to the Empire if they caused any more issues. Cain was angry and asked if he was trying to do something. Then he was also ready for it while Icarus was stopping him, as this was enough, and they should return because there was no need to deal with him. The older man challenged him to fight him if he could because he would burn him into ashes, and he used the rune flare and directed it to go and open his enemies. Icarus was worried because rune flare was a 4th-class spell, and she wondered why a 4th-class magician was maintaining a warp gate in the middle of nowhere. Iselin went to him and showed him the 3,000 golds that he demanded, and he was glad because she had the money. He changed the price since they wasted his precious time and asked for 15 gold for each person, which would total 45 gold, and told them not to be sad because it included the damage they had dealt to his pride. Cain could not bear this, so he wanted to teach him a lesson. He saw the frost while trying to pull out his sword. He requested Iselin to freeze and cover this land with her cold breath, and her Rost field was getting rid of the rune flare. He couldn't believe that a mere mercenary like her did this. She completely froze his flare, and he was stunned and wondered how she could use a 5-class spell. It seemed to her that he misunderstood her for being mercenary, so she thought she deserved payment as a form of apology. He wondered what she meant, but she warned that if he refused, she had no choice but to report those issues to the Magic Tower under Celine, Vice Guild Master of the Mercenary Guild. He was stunned to know she was the Vice Guild Master of Mercenaries and thought he messed with the wrong person, as the Magic Tower Masters were already favoring the nobles of the Avalon Empire after recruiting Evergrande back as the Chief Imperial Magician. The Magic Tower is already facing backlash for failing to maintain neutrality, so if the Vice Guild Master of the Mercenary Guild officially reports this to the Magic Tower, they will kick him out. He apologized to her and asked for her forgiveness, and she asked for the payment she requested. And Cain and Icarus also asked to pay them. He asked how much he needed, and she said that 100 gold per person and a free usage of Rapgate, and he was shocked to know that price. That day, Cain and Icarus thought they were looking at Joshua while Iselin was extorted money. The protagonist went to see the second prince of the Avalon Empire, Kaizen von Britten, and he said that he was honored to think the famous Count Joshua would come for him and asked what he wanted. The protagonist was glad because of his actions. The future slowly started to change, which is why new factors he was unaware of have started to surface. However, his goals haven't changed because he will ensure to take control of his life this time. The second prince inquired if there was a reason why he came looking for him, so he uttered his motive that he was there to see Princess Cercerin and asked for his permission to visit her alone. His knights were shocked and wondered who he thought he was because he was talking so casually with their lord and told him to show respect to the second prince. The prince calmed them down as there was no need for them to get involved and questioned why he should allow him to see the princess because he didn't even have the right to be there. The protagonist replied that he had the right and was sure he would be already aware, and would have heard the news that the princess's husband would soon be determined through the bloody battle of Bircher. He will be the event's victor anyway, but there would be no point in his struggle if the princess's condition continued to worsen, so it would be necessary to check on her condition. The knights were angry because he dared to enter the second palace unauthorized for such a reason and supposed his pride must be through the roof. Kaizen asked if you were saying he would take on the entirety of the imperial knighthood by himself, as even Captain Rod would try to hinder him, and said it wouldn't be impossible. The prince liked him, so he agreed to entertain him with the idea. He suggested that the two of them should wager on it, and if he claimed victory at the bloody battle of Bircher without any assistance, he would not interfere with him taking Cercerin from the second palace. However, if he loses, he must claim his loyalty not to his father but to him and tell him to swear in his name that he will serve Lord Kaizen. The protagonist smirked because the prince behaved as he expected, so he agreed and made a deal, but in return, he wanted to visit the princess. He uttered that he made it when he said that he wanted to enter alone and didn't want anyone, including the prince, to be in the room with them. The knights got furious and reminded him of his place as supplemental commander and asked why should they permit it to be alone with the princess. He was furious and asked them how long they intended to call him the supplemental commander. They were terrified of his aura, which made them kneel, so they realized that he already surpassed human limits and was superhuman. The protagonist warns them that if they interrupt his conversation with the prince again, he will cut them down, and the prince tells his knights that was the reason he suggested calming down. The prince agreed to allow him to visit the princess alone and realized there might be something to look forward to during the bloody battle of Bircher, thanks to him. He wanted to keep their promise that he would defeat all the knights and become his trusted sword. Meanwhile, at the palace of the first prince garden, the first prince was worried about his sister because she had fully healed and wondered why his father was trying to decide who her husband should be. He can't understand his father's thoughts, and the commander of Imperial Knight Rod Den Haag is also confused. The prince hears that the first challenger for the bloody battle of Bircher is supplemental commander Joshua Sander and wonders if that will be alright. The commander realized that he hadn't heard that Count Joshua was no longer a supplemental commander, nor was he his subordinate. He thought it would be perfect if he could handle him personally and asked him to take care of him, and the commander thought that the first prince had been primarily on edge since Joshua arrived at the palace. That was because the first prince was most influential after the Emperor Marcus within the Avalon Empire, even if every other force combined powers, including the second prince. However, if Count Joshua marries Princess, he would earn the right to challenge the throne and become the most significant threat. Therefore, rather than make him a competitor, they should make him an aide. He suggested that it would be better if they brought him to their side, and he thought about it and remembered Joshua dancing with Cheryl and didn't think that would suit him. In that case, he guessed they did not have a choice and said there was another knight that could stop him and was pondering. Kisser Van Britten inquired if he was telling him that another superhuman knight was beside him, and he excitedly told him that Galahad had returned. He was stunned to know that he had returned. The commander said yes and uttered that he would provide immense support for the first prince, and he was also confident that he would be the final victor of the bloody battle of Bircher. At the palace of the second prince, the protagonist was in the prince's room, healing her and praying to those who connect humans with the skies, those who provide comfort for the dead and provide the living with energy, and those most skilled at healing allow thine warm light to illuminate the world. He was using the Holy Resist because it was a holy spell that only bishops and higher officials could use. He was getting nervous, but everything went well, and he thought Cercerin could find some comfort with this. She was conscious, so he asked if she could hear his voice. She recognized it and was surprised and wondered if it was him. He confirms his identity and asks her if she remembered their promise about finding the cure to her illness. So he tells her that the cure is finally completed and thanks her for waiting. She asked if it was the medicine Evergrant made, but he told her he was sure that medicine was just used to put her in a more unstable state. He asked her to trust him and take this medicine instead because it would completely heal her illness. But there was just one side effect. she would lose part of her memory and might even forget him. Although he knew the medicine, he could not give it to her because he had no right to take away her memory. But when he faced her death, regretful thoughts flooded his mind, and he was apologetic to her. He hesitated even now because if her illness were cured, her family would only use her to exert their influence. She asked him why he was hesitating and told him not to try to shoulder any of the burdens alone, and if he was doing it for her sake, he should think about how she would feel. She told him to come to her if he was worried about what might happen in the future, and she wanted him to promise her as her precious friend, so he promised to find her. She reminded him of their first meeting when she told him that he shared a name with a flower that she liked, but he remembered she said that made her sadder, just like the meaning of the Sanders flower. She asked him if he knew the meaning of that flower, and he was aware and told her not to forgive him. She said that he would not forget him especially and asked for one last favor. She requested him to feed her the medicine, so he took medicine and thought that since he had received so much of her help in his past life, he would do this for her. She thanked him, but he said he should be the one to thank her and thought he would take care of her in this life and opened the medicine to feed her. At Avalon Empire Capital, the Academy Magic Tower branch office in front of the Rap Gate, they were at the capital after a long time, but it felt like just yesterday they had running away from there but had finally returned. Icarus said they should first find their lord, but Iselin asked if it was right if she could join them later, and they wondered why she wasn't coming with them. She explained that she had some personal business to attend the Magic Tower branch office, and would return after she was done with her business. It was a bit unfortunate for them, but they promised to see her again, and she assured them to be back soon, so they shouldn't be so sad as she would see them later. Cain tells Icarus that he will be on his way since he has to do something, and she pinches his ear, and asks where he is sneaking out. He says he has something to do and asks if she is bullying him. She threatened that she should show him what actual bullying is, but he said that was not what he meant and explained that he heard that the Knights of Agnes Duchy were there, so he wanted to meet up with his old buddies. She wonders why he is meeting his old colleagues, so he asks her if he is not the commander of Count Joshua's Knight's Order and must gather skilled knights to recruit. A knight order solely for his lord that far outstrips Avalon's 7 knights, who were soon to be called Gold Spirit Knights. It was the name he came up with, and he wanted to give his all to complete it. She guessed they have WLM Knights, but calling them their household knights would make her feel bad for Reinhardt. She finally feels like they are starting to take shape as a noble family, and it seems he made quite the effort, unlike Cain. She agreed and said she would be looking forward to the Gold Spirit Knights he mentioned, and he also wanted to meet their expectations. A warning letter was sent to the Magic Tower of the Empire's capital regarding a mercenary mage who appears to be a teen at least at the entry. Class 5 has appeared, and her name is Salin, so they shouldn't get on her nerves. Wufa Avalon Empire, Capital Magic Tower branch manager, thought it crazy to think that she was in her teens, but at the entry of Class 5, he was shocked because she was at the same level as him. A man speedily opened the door and told him that he needed to come downstairs because someone in Class 5 who wanted to register at the Magic Tower had come. He added that she claimed to be the mercenary mage, Celine. She was waiting downstairs, and he rushed there, introduced himself, and asked if she had waited for long, but she replied that she didn't think he would show up so quickly. Wufa explained that although there were several procedures in the case of someone like her, he wished to see her directly and briefly explain her since she mentioned that she wished to register as a Class 5. But she is already affiliated with the Mercenary Guild. She cannot become affiliated with their Magic Tower, therefore, she may need to transfer her affiliation. She explained that she had come there to register for her class but didn't want to become affiliated with the Magic Tower, and he was shocked. He asked if she was saying she could reach Class 5 purely through self-study, and without using any of the Magic Tower's knowledge. He suggested taking this opportunity to change her affiliation to the Magic Tower and pass on their knowledge to her. Without the knowledge of the Magic Tower, going past Class 5 is nearly impossible. And more importantly, a young age with talent like her will be able to receive many benefits from the Magic Tower. As she mentioned, she is not trying to register for his class because she needs the Magic Tower knowledge unless she needs the entire Magic Tower Confederation for something. She has no thought of changing her affiliation. He wondered what he meant, so she reminded him of the thing that the Magic Tower Lords officially announced not long ago. He remembered that they officially acknowledged the missing mage among the 7 mages, the Seed of Lightning, Jackie Steropes, as dead, and she added that the Magic Tower Lord would choose a new Seed of Lightning from the mages who have registered their class. Wufa apologized to her because no matter how talented she was, it would be difficult for someone at the entry level of Class 5 to be considered as a candidate. She inquired if it would be difficult for someone in just class 5, and he told her that to reach a class beyond that, she would need the magic tower knowledge. She showed him her magic and asked if this much would be enough, and he was shocked. But when the several magic attributes passed close to him, he got so terrified that he called his mother. He was stunned because, without a single chant, she cast spells of several attributes at the class shield spell and thought if she was at this level, then she might be a class 6 quad magician, which means she had the talent at the level of the 7 mages seed of Storm Theta Al the very least. On the other side, Cain was pondering what he heard from his colleagues to obtain the Imperial Princess.